outbreak of the pandemic caused changes in every area of our lives. Museums were definitely not an exception. Today, after a few months' break, I'm very glad to be able to invite you to another meeting in a museum. This time, the journey brings us to Belgium, in particular to one of its 10 biggest cities, Leuven. Those who have already visited Leuven have probably experienced the combination of contemporary art and old masters under one roof. Those who live there may have already noticed that the museum acts more like an integral part of the community rather than a separate institution. Finally, those like me who had no chance to visit it yet should not miss an opportunity to experience their museum online and follow their social medias. Their witty and down-to-earth communication really inspires to dig deeper into the history of art. How to put museum in a community network and communicate in such an open and all-inclusive manner. I'm grateful for Hanne Grégoire, Head of Communication and Press of Museum Leuven, who kindly agreed to share her experience. Please tune in and join our conversation. If we could start, then my first question was, I guess, the broadest possible question, because when we started to speak about this interview, I think COVID was still in quite a peak, and now when we're finally talking, I think the situation is finally getting better, and a lot of people can come back to museums, and museum workers can think about what happened in the past to look back at it. So I was just thinking, what are your main takeaways? And now when you can just well, I'm not sure if you can, but maybe if you can relax a bit after all this intensive period, how could you describe it? What happened and what were the main takeaways of the situation for your museum?
Well, it's a broad question indeed. Relaxing is not really a thing yet, because we open, I think, more or less 8 new exhibitions a year. Some are between 8 and 12, so it's always busy. We're always running from one thing to another. It was a quite busy year, but it was really interesting because what we mostly learned was that we actually have a lot of things that we can use and that we can harvest to put online, to put digitally. But on the other hand, what's really important is that you felt the need of people really coming back to and to the museum, and that's still the main focus of what we do and what visitors actually expect. So it's a base, everything that's online. It's really to get people acquainted with what we do and to get them to go to the museum, or otherwise, you probably heard a smack on the microphone. But also the other way, if they visited and they liked it, but it's, visiting museum is really taking a lot of stuff in, and we have ancient art and contemporary art, so that's also a different headset that you need to use. So you put also everything online if people want to, still get some information when they have a little more headspace. And I think that's the main takeaway, and that's something that's really there to stay for us digitally, is that we're still going to put everything like audio guide or the text on the walls or the publications, that we're going to put it online so visitors can really enjoy it in their own pace, actually. Yeah.
When you mentioned that your museum is very broad, that you have some classical and some ancient art, and also I saw that you have a lot of modern art as well. So it seems that it's a very broad range of topics, and also from your communication side, it also seems like your museum is everything. It's witty and it's not afraid to make some jokes, but also on the same time it's also serious. So I was thinking, on one hand, the first part, what is the identity of your museum as such, and wasn't it difficult to transmit it through all the digital means?
Well, I don't know if you know how M is financed partly due to government subsidies. So we have a really strong affiliation with Leuven, with the city. We're really a city museum. We're also 2 museums for the price of 1. As you said, we're really, really broad range of of art, which makes it quite the adventure of communicating about it. But we started thinking like, what is it actually that we want to be? What's the obligation that we have towards the people who subsidize us? And what we came was we need to be factual. We need to we deal a lot with facts. You can't change a fact. That's a whole other discussion. But history is history, and we stick to the facts. But we really want to bring it to a human level, because at the end of the day, the reason why we exist and what's the difference between us and private collections is we're open to public. And so open to public means stocking on a public level, because not everyone had the luxury to think about art or to be raised with art. So that's what we really wanted to do, is really talk on a human level, and also acknowledge the fact that a lot of terms that we use, not a lot of people know this. You can talk to experts and you can throw some things around like contrapposto and that kind of thing. But not a lot. If I tell this to my parents, because I wasn't raised in an artsy environment, and if I tell this to my parents, go, yeah, no idea. And that's always a test that we do. Can we explain this to our parents or to our aunts or to our neighbors? If it's not, okay, then we started creating formats to give people everything they need to be comfortable in a museum, to tell them, well, it's okay that you don't know everything. It's okay you don't know every artist or every artwork or know where it came from. And that's something we started playing with, like, okay, we have to be factual, but we're human and we fall flat on our faces, and that's okay. We're still evolving. And I hope that we can set this further along, this type of communication.
I guess it's quite challenging and requiring a lot of collaboration between different departments. Maybe it's my mistaken idea, but I can imagine that people who are working directly with exhibitions, they're always like wanting to show, like, okay, we have this amazing piece of art, we want to show everything about it. And then isn't there a clash of interest between you and people who are working with the exhibit?
I think partially already know the answer to this. Well, I mean, it's quite special in the way that there's a really strong collaboration between the curators and the researcher and communications and the education department. So that's a really strong click. But a big part of my job is being a firefighter. Is it really a problem? What's the problem with it? Because, of course, from a content point of view, they're like, yeah, but you have to tell it was in 1418 and it was because of this and this and this. And then we go, yeah, but slow down. What's the essence? What's really important? What can we miss? What's bad? What's a mistake if you put it like this? So yeah, sometimes it's a lot of discussions about really, really small things and details. But we're getting there slowly. It takes time and a lot of patience, and sometimes it goes really well, and sometimes it's a big fire, and then we put it out and we learn from it, and we move on. Yeah.
But then on the other hand, you also have like really out of the box projects, like if I remember correctly, like the exhibition called The 10. Mm-hmm. How could you tell us a bit more about that, and how does ideas like that evolve? Because it sounds really amazing example of how to collaborate with very different audiences and involve them.
Yeah, well, that's quite a project that you point out there. It's something that we do and have been doing every 2 years, and the main focus, it differs from project to project. So one time it was students, one time it was with people from actually all over the world, migrants with God knows what background, like high level, but also because we had to run because of war. So there also was a big difference. And this year was completely different just because of COVID, and then we normally come together and you talk about this, and it's something that starts from our education department or a team, because it's really participative and the main focus is the public, so they are the ones responsible for it, and then they talk to communication and they talk to the curators, like you make a selection. And this year we had to do it digitally, so we did a really big experiment in first, how can we work with public, because you have to think about a lot of things. That's the whole methodology that we use. That's the whole visual literacy, the fact that walking into a museum is not just, well, there's pictures on the wall and enjoy it, or like with contemporary art, it's a white cube and there's things. And it was really about making people think, okay, they think about the lighting, they think about the connection between the works. So that's the whole idea about why we do this, because the visual literacy is methodology that we use a lot in M, to have people walk out of the museum and think, I didn't know this. It made me change the way I look at this kind of painting or this kind of sculpture. So now we had to do it digitally. So it was really challenging to work digitally on an actual exhibition, but actually we were really happy. We had to change our communication plan, I think, every few weeks, because there was a problem, or the museum could open or it could not, or it was a company of 10 people. Well, we can't fit 10 people together in a space. That's not possible. Oh, wait, it is. And we had to rethink everything all the time, but all the credits to the colleagues at the education department, because they're really patient, and it got us a lot of really nice images of people really seeing the pictures for the first time that they saw digitally. And now you have the whole experience of, well, you can see digitally, and then you're in the museum, you're looking at it, and suddenly it changes. It's like, oh my God, it's way smaller, or it's way bigger, or really, is that how they do it? Or and that was really nice about it. So it was really an interesting project for us too, considering the circumstances we live in right now. What's the difference between seeing it on a computer screen and really living it in a museum space?
But from what I hear, it also requires very broad range of capacity of different skills, because everything was changing so fast. So what was the main challenge maybe in this process, and what was the main benefit? What was the outcome? How did the people react when they saw the final result?
Oh, they were really happy. That was really, for us, it was a moment of relief, because you imagine, oh, we hope that they like it, and we hope that they are really surprised, and that was, well, that was exactly according to what we hoped would be. But you're right, it does require a lot of skills, and skills that we don't particularly all have in a museum. We had a lot of experience the last year. We learned while doing. But in this case, we thought, okay, what do we need? We need environments where we can brainstorm, where we can talk to each other, when you don't need too many different platforms, because, yeah, as you said at the beginning, hope the Wi-Fi works, I hope the sound works, I hope the video works. And the selection of people was somewhere between beginning of 20s, but also at the end of 60s. Well, yeah, you have to tell, yeah, it's that button. No, not that button. Not everyone is as tech savvy as the other. So we had someone who helped us recreate the museum on Miro. I don't know if you know, it's a brainstorming tool. We use this really, really often. It's really nice to see, because you really make kind of cartoon version of M, and we use different kind of avatars for each guinea pig or participants. And probably, as you know, it's in Dutch called proefkonijnen, which is test rabbits, roughly translated. So every participant had their little rabbit avatar. Everyone was a different rabbit, and they played a game, and they could earn points. And with these points earned, they could make their favorite piece of art stay in competition. And now it's you can see it in our museum spaces.
But I guess it also requires some kind of cultural determination. You mentioned that you are doing this type of like inclusive exhibitions every 2 years. So I guess it's also a cultural thing of a museum to just include, to collaborate, to co-create together with the audiences.
For us, it's one of our mission statements because we are subsidized. Now I'm also only blaming it on the money, but it's not that. But it's for it's always been important, and I think we're yeah, you can see we're also quite good at it to make really participative projects. And this is only one project. We have another one. Normally we have in the summer, we have Midsummer, which is a festival that goes in our museum garden. And we also have a whole project called Midsummer Breaks Out in the prison that's in Leuveno, with also inmates making art, and that's exhibited on the actual event. So we have this kind of things. We also have a collaboration with the child hospital in Leuveno, which is also quite renowned. It has kids from 0 to 18 who are in there, and we send contemporary artists there to make art with them, or we make pop-up exhibitions or this kind of thing. So yeah, we really put a lot of effort in setting things up with the public in either way, whether they're inmates, whether they are normal public, whether they are whatever their background is. Yeah.
It's very interesting to hear. It seems that, well, at least in my head, museums were always like, you know, a separate institution. You come here, you visit, you see some art, and it seems that in your case, it's just a normal part of all the community network, because you're just collaborating, and it seems you're just a part of community life. And I thought about the initiative that you have in times of COVID-19 to support young artists. Maybe you could also tell a bit more on that, because I think now it's the exhibition, The Constant Glitch, that is based on this, right?
Yeah, indeed. That's actually an idea that came from our curators, one of our curators of contemporary art. And well, we have two. I'm not going to put numbers on because it's always a tricky thing. But our curators contemporary art, our colleagues contemporary art, are really involved in a network of contemporary artists. And I think it was last summer that they came up with, we feel that it has a really big impact, because normally they have a lot of income from sales or tours that they do, the artists or whatever. And they felt like, well, they felt the problems raising, that the upcoming generation of artists was just being held back, which would have implications on the long run. And then we start discussing. It was in the beginning, it was our curator, and she started talking to the city and to another corporation that we have really good connection with. We started talking, because you don't want to give money, because it has to. That's not our job. We're not a welfare institute. We're an institute of art. And then they came up with, well, we're going to do more. We're going to buy their art. And at that point, really make the engagement that we want to support them, but support them and be a spotlight for them, make exhibitions with them in the future, or maybe put them in collection presentations, as we do a lot. And so that's why we wanted to make a really durable and sustainable relationship with those up and coming artists from different backgrounds. One of the criteria was that they need to be active in Belgium, but they didn't need to be from Belgium. So we have really wide range, which is, I love this. It's it's a really inclusive statement that we used. So yeah. But it doesn't come now it sounds easy and peachy and it's fluffy and rainbows and we know what to do. It's not this, because every project that we do in M, it involves someone from each department, because we all have our own expertise. But different expertise are different interests, are different points of view, and that's always it's a balance, and we're still figuring out where to put our money and our energy. So it's an ongoing process.
When you mentioned that, I was also really surprised when I saw the amount of all the digital, on one hand, digital platforms that you're using, on the other hand, like a very big variety of online activities. You have your podcast, you have your magazine, YouTube channel, and basically, yeah, me being in the Netherlands, I really want to do but I saw a lot, I guess, and it's also inspiring that you have it in all 3 languages. So I was just, the only thing that I was thinking while going through all of this, I was wondering, okay, they must have a lot of employees and tremendous communication department. And then I saw how many people are working there, and I just couldn't believe. So my question was like, how do you manage to prioritize and just differentiate your time among all of these activities? Is it also some kind of experimentation, what works, what doesn't work, or how do you manage with all this broad variety?
Yeah, well, workload is a thing. That's an ongoing experiment, because I'm really, really happy with my team. Originally, 2 years ago, we were with only 2 people. Now there's 5 of us, including me. Only communication, but we work together really strongly with education, because we have an all-inclusive view. So the reason why we do podcasts or magazine or video is because, how do I explain this? Our all-inclusive view is the fact that not everyone can see really well, or can hear, or can read. And it's not only those who are diagnosed as with this kind of, I'm going to call it disability just because of the lack of another term in English at the moment. But we started thinking, yeah, well, it's more than this, because we see so many images, and sometimes you just want to listen to something but don't want to overbear your eyes. So, okay, we have this audio guide that we do anyway. Let's make a podcast out of this. So just we're doing the recordings anyway. Why not extend this and make a podcast out of it? So you have this link between what's in the museum itself and what's online. And we try to do this all the time. The videos that we make to also put in exhibitions, they're also videos derived for socials. And we try to do this kind of thing all the time. All the texts that are used to put on the walls, they are inspired of what's on the website. Just so it doesn't matter how you want to live art. We have everything that you need either way, that you could need either way.
And you mentioned that you're trying to kind of provide the content for very different audiences, with people who prefer, I guess, or just have to use different types of information. So how would you say, do you succeed in reaching those audiences? And how much of your communication is based on like experimentation, or in other words, did you have any failures?
Yeah, of course. We have so much failures. I don't know where to begin. We keep testing, and we keep on testing every day, especially last year. My God, that was the example that I gave from the audio guide. So we do a lot of audio guides. We also do this in 3 languages every time. So we thought last year, okay, we're going to do a podcast. We're doing this for people who need to hear it and not read it either way. Okay, let's going to put it online. And we put it online, and then we start thinking, oh, yeah, well, we put it online, but we don't have an audio identity. How are you going to recognize that it's M? Yeah, okay, we have to think about this. Yes, how do we want to sound? Yes, okay. And then we started to have the problem that our audio guides are on these little podcatcher thingies. So you put it just against your ear. So the quality doesn't really matter, because normally you're in a big space and you're walking and you can't fixate on the quality of the audio. And that's when we realized that if you hear the first audio guides online, it sounds like art. You're going to realize that the quality is way too low. If you're hearing this with noise cancelling headphones and you're sitting in your garden with noise cancelling headphones, you're going to hear that the audio is quite rough. So we had to up the level, the quality of our podcast, but that has costs implied. Okay, the budget is budget, so what can we do? And we had this kind of thing all the time, and we also in discussion all the time, like for the podcast. Okay, we had the exhibition about I have to think about Thomas Demand, but we converse in 3 languages. Thomas didn't want to talk for the podcast because he wasn't in Belgium, so we had that problem. So okay, we're going to go and talk to experts, but then you have to go thinking, okay, which format, what works, what doesn't work, which supplier, because we don't do this in-house, we outsource this. But what supplier are we going to use? It's different from an audio guide. And now we had a Belgian artist, Vincent Gijskes, but he doesn't want to talk about his own work. So he's in Belgium, we see him quite often, but he doesn't want to talk about his work. So that's also, it's not really a failing, but there are challenges that you don't think about, just because it's something we didn't face before. So there's a lot of energy in thinking in formats, in thinking this works, this doesn't work. We had Moving Henry, which was about the restoration process, which was really good success. It works better than the Thomas Demand sequels. But why? Yeah, well, we have to see, how did we distribute this? Was there a difference? Is the language difference? Is the format a difference? So we always have to think about this kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know if it really answers your questions completely, but it's there's some of the challenge, and that's only audio-wise. It's also with, for example, the videos. If you put videos online, we do it in 3 languages, so it's always Dutch, French, English. That's always the order. But when it's in the rooms, when it's in the museum spaces, it's burned into the video, so it's one image actually. But if you put it on YouTube, you can't do this. You need it in a separate file because it needs to be automated. So this kind of challenge, and so we put a lot of videos online. Just, yeah, the videos are ready for the museum space. Yes, ready to go on YouTube. We put it on YouTube. We started our communication campaign, and then at some point we realized, shit, it's burned in. They're not the separate files. Yeah, we'll take them down again and lose our views because we started the communication campaign. So we have this kind of challenge because we do so much and it goes so fast. It slips through, but we need a level of we have quality level that we want to maintain. So yeah.
But it also seems that you're really reflecting on it quite a lot. Like, okay, like we tried this, it doesn't really work. Should we continue it or not? So I think that's really fascinating, because sometimes it seems that it's easy just to slip in. Like, okay, we started to do those podcasts. Maybe not so many people are listening to it, but we started to do it, so let's continue. So it seems that you really reflect on the process itself.
Yeah, well, it's quite difficult because what you just said is really interesting, because that's something we're facing when we talk to the curators, because you made a podcast, it was really cool to make this, let's do this. And then we have to tell them, well, yeah, but it costs a lot of money, it costs so much time, and only, I don't know, there's only 500 streams. And does it really add up? Well, according to us, not, because it's too much of an effort. But they go, yeah, but we did it last time. Aren't we going to do this again? So it's yeah. Sometimes we do it. The last one, we didn't really want to do this because we thought, well, there's going to be an audio guide, so let's do Sounds Like Art. That's also kind of podcast. It's not dedicated. It's not as dedicated as 4 experts talking about an artist, of course, but it still works. And somehow we caught up in the process, and time proceeds, and then you have to do it just because you're too far in the process to turn back. So we also have this kind of challenges, that you making arrangements and really talking everything through with the curators is really, really important. And it's something that we're reflecting and evaluating, because they say, yeah, but we thought you did. And they say to us, yeah, we thought that it was okay with you. And we thought, no, we thought we were brainstorming. So we have this type of discussion. And it's interesting because sometimes you get miscommunication, and it's interesting to see where it went wrong. And sometimes it's just a slip of the tongue. So it's a lot of reflecting, and it's a lot of data and numbers and diving into data. But well, that's the only way. It's something we have to do. We work with municipal money, so just cost efficiency also.
And I was also wondering about the impact of COVID, of course, of all the pandemic period on all the digital consumption. I guess it's easy just to believe like, okay, all the people, they were missing culture, they were searching culture online. But is it true? Did you notice any change in the patterns? Of course, I can imagine that there is more people using it, but maybe I'm not sure if you're tracing it, whether the structure of the audience changed.
Yeah, we saw an increase in website traffic and an increase in socials, and that's widely spread. It's the easy ones like Instagram and Facebook, and that went up really, I think, by 10 or 15%. But also LinkedIn went up. But on the other hand, we're following a lot of studies, and that does confirm a certain feeling that we have. It's temporary. It's not that it doesn't replace walking in the museum itself, and that's something that we're still talking internally about, because we see this and we know this, and research enforces that idea that the whole digital movement, it's a surplus. And that we have to keep in mind, it's surplus. It's something that people consume before or after the museum, but it doesn't replace the museum. And that's something that we really notice also in the visitor numbers.
I was also wondering whether it might change somehow the pattern of the culture consumption, because you could say like, okay, I'm sitting at home, I'm just I have more time maybe rather than while walking in the museum exhibition, but I'm not sure if it's possible to see it somehow, whether people are using your podcasts or your virtual exhibitions or all the other products somehow differently.
Yeah, well, differently. I'm thinking now, because we have the 360 tours where you can walk in exhibition rooms, and then we saw that people are staying longer, but only temporary, and it was most of all at the first lockdown, and most of all the beginning of the second lockdown, and after that it just fades, because I think it's maybe similar to what happened to video calling. In the beginning, everyone was video calling, like, hey, mom, and hi, friends, I'm going to do an online quiz. And after a while, you go, I've been online all day. I've been working online, and like you meeting students online, meeting colleagues online, and then talking online to my friends. It's too much. And you saw this also in the numbers in exhibition. There was an increase, and it was really remarkable. But everything that goes beyond easy snackable, like the Instagram feed, or actually also the podcast, because podcasts really came up. A lot of people go running now on podcasts. that stays the same. That's quite similar, but everything that requires more attention, like walking through an exhibition, it decreased a little bit again. It's back to the pre-corona level.
And it was also quite fascinating to see that. I think when you just opened after the second lockdown, I just saw messages that that your all month slots were fully booked in a week or something like that. So it was really impressive that, as you say, people really wanted to get back. But I was curious, do you see any changes in patterns how people visit? Because some people say like, okay, now we're more careful watching things, or but is it the only thing?
There was a big difference after the first lockdown. Everyone was really excited, but like in an awkward way, like, oh, I'm out, can't touch anything, other people, damn, no, not coming near other people. But we had, because we're quite a big museum, so I hope you can visit us soon so you can see for yourself. But we're quite a big museum, so we had a number of people that we could let into the museum spaces, and we decided, no, we're going to stay below this. So people really have the feeling that they're in M, that they have M just for themselves. So that was a tagline that we used in a campaign. M just for you, just, come to us and you have the museum, you have this exclusive feeling of getting the museum all for yourself, which is amazing. And then we had a lot of people who probably set foot in it for the first time in a museum. And then the second lockdown after this, it was more people who were already been in museums. We set our visitor profiles based on interest, not based on I'm thinking prototypes, but that's not the right word. But the buyer personas. We don't use buyer personas. We use personas based on interest. And then you could really see the second lockdown people who normally would go to a museum and now couldn't have gone for a long time. They were awkward because there were other people, but they weren't as awkward about the whole, I'm in a museum, I have to be careful. They didn't have that kind of excitement. So there was a difference, but yeah.
And also what you mentioned, I'm sorry that I'm jumping among the topics, but you mentioned the tagline of that you can have the museum on your own. And then I remember that I also noticed that sometimes you use like your communication messages, they're like they seem to be more oriented maybe to youth, or they're a bit provocative. They're just very fresh in my eyes, like this one that you mentioned, or the one with the exhibits in times of COVID, that basically you can buy an exhibit for yourself and in this way to donate. And I was thinking, don't you get a kind of a backlash from some people, from the people who support like traditional notion of museum, like what are you doing, where like isn't it going against the traditional notion of museum? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Sometimes, although we mostly get positive feedback, actually, people are really starting to be surprised the fact that museums speak human, that kind of thing. So we get a lot of positive feedback. Sometimes, of course, we get does it really have to be? And normally it's like this, and why don't we do this? But then we just do our thing anyway, just to show like we're a communication team. We do this every day. We really know what we're doing. You can trust us. So that's something that's still going on, of course, but actually it's mostly positive.
Does it require a lot of proving? Because you said that you have to show that you know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, but that's always the same with communication. I also hear this. We talk a lot with museums amongst us. We have a really good connection between Beaux-Arts and SMAC and all the other big museums. So we talk a lot, and you always hear the same thing. It's like communication. Everyone can write and read. So everyone thinks that they know communication, and they don't really perceive this as an expertise. So really have to thank you for your idea. I know that you saw something on Instagram. I'm really happy that you brought this to us. not what we're doing, but fine, okay. So that's something now. That's something we still have to keep on working on. But it's not just us. I know this from a lot of colleagues.
And do you have like any particular? Well, I believe that you have a particular vision of the museum where you are going to. So I was just wondering, what is the vision from a side of communication, or what you are trying to reach with the way that you're communicating right now?
I really want to set this human line further. I really want to bring the museum even more on a human level. It's this, and also really that all-inclusive vibe, because we have, as a society, we really have the need to label things like, well, you're in a wheelchair, so this is where you have to go on the website to find your information. And the idea that we have is more like someone in a wheelchair has the same needs as someone with a stroller. They also need to know where the elevator is, and they also need to know if the toilets are with steps or not. It doesn't make a difference. And that's something that we really, really want to prolong, that like it doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like, what your age is, what your education is. It's art. It's something for everyone, and it can really change the way you see things, and it really can change the way how you perceive your own life. And that's something we want to keep on working on. And it does come with sometimes a little quirky or a little witty tone of voice, and then that's something I really, really want to set further. Yeah.
And to wrap up everything, I was just wondering, what were your main achievements? I would say, is there anything that you would be specifically proud and said like, okay, during my work here we did this and that, and maybe there were some things that you still haven't managed to achieve?
What I really want to perceive more, and that's something we're working on, is also making our socials more human, like putting more people on the pictures, and also putting kids and more different types of people, like a whole representation, people from all different colors and backgrounds, that they see themselves represented in what we do. That's something I'm not quite satisfied with where we are right now. No, but I'm actually really proud of where we are as a team also, because I have a team and everyone has their own expertise. I have someone who works with me on press. I have someone who works on corporate communication and the investor relations. I have someone who works on socials, and I have someone who socials and website, and our graphic designer. And it just matches, and that's something I'm really proud of, because that's how we make campaigns and how we can recreate our identity. But by the end of the year, I really want to professionalize them even more, and even work more on the brand identity and on the audio identity, and make us more recognizable. But we'll see where we land.
Well, hopefully not on the fourth wave of COVID.
Oh my God. And if it does, we're ready.